This morning, Magnus Carlsen was in an extremely bad position. In the World Cup, it's a first 1.5 points format. Magnus Carlsen had lost the first game, being down 1 point, so his opponent Vincent Keymer only needed a draw to knock him out of the World Cup. Magnus Carlsen has been extremely stressed recently, even stating that the World Cup is almost only a chore for him. He either wins, which everyone expects, or he loses, and he faces another embarrassing defeat. In this game, Magnus had the chance to cause some problems with the white pieces, but he must win. Otherwise, he will play no further part of this World Cup. Magnus Carlsen, when you need a win, you've got to be aggressive. He opens with e4, setting the tone for the game. We see e5, one of the most classical responses, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5, the starting point of the Spanish game or the Roy Lopez. And then Keymer just continues, going knight to f6. d3 by Magnus, playing a bit of a quiet game. He doesn't want to strike in his hand too early. He wants to set up all his pieces and try and play for a more stable advantage that he can just convert in the endgame. So we see bishop to c5, bishop g5, so now white is putting pressure on both these knights. I think this is sort of venturing into new territory. This position hasn't been seen all too many times. This is Magnus trying to take his opponent out of prep and enter sort of more equal position, but one where he's not playing against Stockfish per se, because if you're playing against someone's prep, you're basically playing against Stockfish. So we see h6, bishop to h4, d6, and then d4. Magnus now picked his moment, trying to crack open the center and get things going, to get all of his active pieces with a lot of pressure on the black position so far, actually doing something, because right now, it's hard to argue his pieces are actually causing too many problems to the black position. So we see e takes d4, knight takes d4. And of course, this is objectively equal, but this early in the middle game, it's not drawish, it's just equal. It means both sides have chances to maybe win this game. So we see bishop to d7, Keymer wants to break that pin, bishop captures, and now Keymer's structure is damaged. And we all know Magnus Carlsen loves imbalance. This sort of imbalance is something he can play on, and maybe in the end game, win the game just from this alone, because they may be equal according to the computers, but these imbalances are very hard to play with humans. You know, awkward piece placement or double pawns can be quite hard to sort of play around. So we see knight c3 by Magnus, castles, and queen to d3. Now, keeping that knight defended, that pawn defended, names which is well known for this is called the overprotection. And the reason for overprotecting a certain piece is it means now both this queen and this knight are free to move, and the e-pawn is not going to lose its only defender. So now bishop to b4 played by Keymer, knight to e2, and queen to e7. Now Magnus' advantage is starting to build. His pieces are actually slightly better placed than Black's. Black's setup is looking a bit passive. And of course, these double pawns could come back to bite Keymer. So we see long castles, rook f to e8, followed by f3. Magnus has got to protect that pawn. Defending it with another pawn is the safest way to go. And Keymer just follows with queen to e5, activating his queen as a very nice central square. Magnus just goes a3, kicking that bishop out of the way. And the bishop decides to capture. So we see captures back with the queen, offering the queen trade, queen captures, and knight captures. So now we're in a completely level endgame, but we all know Magnus has made a career of winning completely even endgames. Let's see what Magnus can cook up here. It should be interesting. So knight h7, g4, grabbing some space on the queen side, f6, Magnus sort of shuffles again, grabbing a bit more space on the king side, knight to e6, Magnus advancing, creeping forward, king to f7, h5, now locking in Black's king side just a little bit. Rook a to d8, rook h to e1, bishop c8, rook d3, bishop b7. Trying to get this bishop on this long diagonal, but these pawns are very well defended. Knight to b1. Magnus wants to reroute that knight because they didn't have too many good prospects on that c3 square. We see c5, trying to get this bishop into the game, c4, and bishop to c6. So these sort of pieces are shuffling around a bit. You know, it's quite cramped with all these pawns on the board. It's going to be hard to jump and gallivant your pieces around the board, so you have to sort of shuffle around one move at a time. b3, rook to b8, be a bit more rearranging of the pieces, and now we see Magnus is preparing finally to break in the structure. After a few more moves, he goes e5. Finally, this deciding something now. We see captures, and knight to f7, and this is the point where I actually started watching the game live, and the analysts are saying the only real move that keeps advantage here is bishop to f4, keeps winning chances, and of course, Magnus finds it. Bishop to f4, with the idea of putting all this pressure here, and if all these exchanges happen, Magnus will end up with a really nicely placed rook on e5. So as he captures, bishop captures, and of course, you don't want to take with the knight, because when that rook captures, this pawn is going to be very weak. And we see a4. So Keymer trying to break through the structure, but this actually loses a bit of the equality. Magnus now actually has a slight edge, and probably very good chances practically, especially because at this point in the game, Keymer was extremely low on time. I believe he had about 5 minutes on his clock. So 5 minutes to play all this endgame against the endgame grindmaster Magnus Carlsen. It's not a task I envy him trying to undertake. So we see bishop to c3, a takes b3 check, king to b2, just using that pawn as an umbrella. Now Black where's your queenside play? You've got all these pieces arranged on the queenside. You've got no place, of course. Keymer trades a pair of rooks. We see rook d5 by Magnus, now putting a bit of pressure on his weak pawn. Magnus is going to win this b3 pawn back in good time. Doesn't have to happen now. If you end up in a situation where the bishop is stuck defending it, that's a piece out of the game. So we see bishop c6, hitting the rook. Rook takes c5, bishop d7. Now you have material equality. But look, Magnus has a passed a pawn. Engine calls this a level game, but practically speaking, when you're low on time and that passed pawn, Magnus can just go push, 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 push. Move that thing up the board, and your play is not very clear cut. It's going to be extremely hard to play this. So we see bishop d4, bishop takes g4. Looks a bit scary, but again, this passed pawn's promoting way before these two are. Magnus pushes the pawn. Knight g5, bishop to e3 now, reshuffling the pieces. Knight f3. But again, a complete even game. A draw will mean Magnus is out of the World Cup. He has to find something. He has to break through and make something of this a-pawn. Otherwise, it's going to be another embarrassing defeat at the World Cup for Magnus Carlsen. So knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, and a5. So after a5, the basically only move that gave black drawing chances, this weird sort of engineer idea rook to b4. It was a move earlier, it's more of a move now, and Keymer just about manages to find it. Rook to b4. So we see bishop d2, rook to a4, king captures on b3, so Magnus regains that pawn. Material is now completely level. And bishop d1 check, of course, king has to move out of the way, and then c6. This move actually gives Magnus a bit more winning chances, because once this pawn is frozen, it's going to be much easier for Magnus to attack. It's not got a chance to slip out of the way, but of course, he's no longer on a dark square, so he can't just attack it with his bishop. So Magnus goes king d4, threatening to just march in, infiltrate, and promote his pawn. We see bishop to f3, defending his pawn, bishop to c3, bishop to g2, again a little bit more shuffling type play, but bishop g2 is actually a big mistake. The engine was saying the only move to hold the draw here is bishop to e2. It's almost just computer nonsense. It's really hard for any sort of human to find that sort of idea. And Magnus doesn't need a second time of asking. He goes rook to f5, the best move in the position, completely cutting off that king, and this rook just controls so much of the board. You see all his files, it can go wherever it wants. It's a really well placed piece. Magnus's pieces are just placed all on the right squares, and that now even frees up the c5 square for his king to march in and threaten to maybe grab that pawn in future. So you see bishop to h3, hitting the rook. Rook slides down to f4. He goes bishop to e6, defending, or sorry, attacking Magnus's pawn. Of course, king has to move, so he goes king c5. Now we see rook to a3. Got to move that bishop or defend it with the king. But this gives Magnus a very easy plan. He just brings that king down. Rook's got to move. Rook goes back. King goes forward again. And as you can see, every single square here is covered by one of Magnus's pieces. So that rook has to get off this file. And this pawn is basically free to promote. So we see rook e2. That pawn goes forward. Bishop h3. That pawn goes forward. Rook to e8. Now defending that frozen square, but not for long. We go rook to e4. Nice little move there. Of course, if the rook takes, Magnus will just promote that pawn to queen with check. He can't take just yet. He goes rook a8. Desperately trying to stop that promotion. Rook to e7 now. It's only a mere formality this rest of this game. He's just going to go rook b7, rook b8, and Keymer is just going to have to resign. So we see c5, rook to b7, and now you can play a move like bishop to g2, like see trying to stop the promotion, but after a move like rook takes g7 check, of course supported by the bishop, you're just going to be losing this game. So it was in this position that Vincent Keymer resigned the game, and Magnus's run at the Fide World Cup will continue. There'll be a rapid tiebreak tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I'll probably cover it on this channel. So if you enjoyed watching that, it really helped me out if you could subscribe to the channel. I'm just trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. Likes and comments also help me out a lot too, because I'll be covering much more of the World Cup, and especially Magnus's games. So hopefully I'll see you guys all in the next one.